let's start. I host Eric here, and I am talking with people. I'm with assorted others in the room, including luminaries such as host Trey, Damon Gray, host Nick, Dr. Ken, Coach Abe, Unify, Carolyn, Captain Courtly, and that's it.
Trey.
And Colin. I said Trey.
Yeah, you said it really fast.
But did you say host Trey?
I did,
did.
I think. Thank you for verifying my professionalism. I am a man who practices an utmost attention to professionalism. There's one adjective people use to describe me. It's that man is a man who exhibits professionalism. It's actually a noun. Regardless, let's very professionally move on to the topic now, which is FE in the non-native speaker, so to speak. We have people who naturally use FI and people who naturally use FE, and yet a lot of FI users end up being quite effective at extroverted feeling, at least in outcomes, if not in intent. Why don't I ask you first about that distinction, Damon, and query the matter of how much of your application of FE is intended, intentional, learned, or practiced, and how much of it is developed undirected?
Okay, good question. So I think I'm the only person who uses FE in the shadow here, right? Technically, in this video, as far as I can tell. So I guess I'll represent the FI people who speak not the native tongue of FE. Okay, so
FI people, I'm with you. Okay.
Yeah. So that being said, for me, what it started out because what I recognized was that it wasn't effective to communicate. For me, it was communication. It was the key. So I took a lot of courses in communication to learn how to communicate effectively. So I would say that naturally I sucked at communication pretty bad. I was direct, I was blunt, I was speak your mind, and that was it. And whatever happens as a result of that, people are weak, and as Eric calls it, moisture. And that's what I naturally felt, so I would just speak. And I was, and I'm like, wow, okay, that wasn't working. It wasn't working in a way that I wanted it. It did not produce the results. So I got into business, and when I got into business, I recognized that I couldn't speak to my staff and said, wow, the moisture is really bothering me. And so I said, there's something else that I need to learn. And what is it that I need to learn? And I said, okay, well, let's look at the people who I think are effective communicators. And one thing I had in common was they evaluated off the ability to communicate off a system of external values or a system of shared ethics between a particular aligned culture. So part of it for me was recognizing what the shared value system was between a certain group of people. And that was, for me, it was very practiced. It was very rehearsed. It was a struggle. And it's always a struggle because it actually drains the life out of me to keep it up. But I know, I understand its necessity, and it has become a part of me where it does kind of operate on autopilot. It's not like I have to turn it on. When I turn it off, it feels so good.
What part of the FE display process is the one that requires the most attention for you? If I were to distinguish between, say, gestures, facial expressions, tone, smiling, stuff like that.
Part of that, the process would be, that takes the most conscious attention would be facial expression and smiling and being part of that. And the other part of it would be being aware of how everyone else is feeling.
So how's Abraham feeling right now?
He's happy as a duck because the duck fuck master practitioner is here. Yeah. So, yeah, but and being aware of it, at least making some type of assumption that someone may be feeling a certain way, and so I have to pay attention to everyone else's facial expressions to see if I've off-put them in a way. This has also become a system of evaluation for me because I have recognized that I used to be incredibly off-putting, and to a point where I would just ignore everybody's facial expressions. And so when Abraham's making all these facial expressions over here in the corner, I can recognize that he's screwing around. But paying attention to that has always been an issue for me because sometimes when I get into my natural mode of operating, I completely let that aspect go, and I'll just entertain myself. The next thing I know is I've offended like 12 people. And I'm like, oh crap! Now I got to go back and fix this, you know. And I'm like, I got to go repair this particular thing. And it's especially important, not so much online, I guess, but more important in my business and my work and my relations with others. It's really, really important. But as far as just a casual, you know, going out or whatever, I don't feel the need to do it as much. But again, those are the parts that require the most conscious attention. The communication skills have improved naturally as being practiced over and over and over again, and being in sales and recognizing, hey, this person may feel a certain way. Go ahead.
Is your goal to prevent harms and assume the quality of the content that you're providing will do the rest? Is your goal to establish bonds that you can rely on later? Is your goal to provide leverage points to move people in certain directions? What's your goal generally for FE?
If I were to prioritize that, it would be 3, 1, and 2.
I forget what they were.
Just rethink of the question.
Shit.
All of that sounds so good.
So, but yeah, because ideally I'd like all 3, but the first one definitely is to use leverage points and to move people forward out of everything. That's the primary. Even if even if they don't like me in the process, I'm okay with that.
Did you have a strategy going in and think I'm gonna establish a point, I establish a pivot spot here, and then I'm going to see what I'm going to do with it? Or do you say, you know what you're going to do with it?
I generally have a direction every time. Yeah, it sucks sometimes because, Eric, I'll tell you, one of the issues being, especially someone who is a judge or externally, is I feel like everything needs to be structured. And so even going into a conversation, I feel like it's robotic, like I have to move the conversation in a direction. I feel like I'm the engineer of the train trying to move the conversation into a certain direction. And so no matter what it is, I deal with that, and I'm like, okay, this is part of my natural idea is I want to move the conversation in this direction, but I feel like I'm always fighting myself because I realize that's not effective. A lot of times. Sometimes it's not called for someone to jump in and structure something. So I sit back and I feel anxiety because I want to structure it, but I'm resisting myself and going, stop trying to structure it, just like
okay. I think personally, I think you and I work pretty well together as far as lead follow dance partners. I'm perfectly happy in a responsive role in these sort of things as well. I like all the different capacities. But regardless, I think I'm gonna take that unspoken or spoken hint and say, let me see if I can involve some other people in the conversation here, even though they're not FI users themselves. How do you guys react to this FE conversation? Do you have any response to anything that Damon has said so far, or any of the questions I asked, or any follow-up questions? Nick, let's start with you.
I think I wrote something down. Yeah. So you said that you developed the FE, and then it sounded like you. I'm super tired right now. Just heads up. So you developed. You knew there was a need for FE when you were looking into how to communicate, because communication was important for sales and your business. So you developed FE, and then you realized how bad, you recognized how poorly people took
Spencer.
you. I don't remember what the fuck I was going to originally say.
Duck Fuck Master Practitioner.
I had a good question too.
We'll come back to you. I'm not going to forsake you.
Damn it. No, I don't know if you should.
Well, I'll come back and see. You can even if you're ready yet or not.
I kind of got distracted a bit once you guys mentioned that you two work well together. I was thinking about how in some ways I think like the ENTJ and ENTP combination. Recently I had heard somebody say that they thought that ENFJs and ENFPs work well together. And so it made me think to myself that, I don't know, is that Abe nodding in agreement with me? Okay, he's nodding in agreement. He likes ENFPs. So one thing I was thinking with the FE thing is I think when there's other functions sort of in communication, that relaxes the need for some of those things, I think, in a certain way. Or it's, I mean, it probably depends on the setting. Um,
Relaxes the need for what?
Communication between FE and FI in terms of types, preferences, like an ENTJ preferring FI and then an ENTP preferring FE. Um,
Well,
I
I
think it
mean,
would
I
be a
think
different. I'm saying I think it would be a different dynamic if you have somebody who has at the lowest point FI, like an ENTJ, and then maybe you had like an ENFJ. I'm not saying that David and Daniel don't get along well, but I'm wondering how that plays a role. So I guess the question I'd ask for Damon is, like, if you're interacting with Daniel, um, what are some struggles that you have with like an extroverted feeling dominant in
Uh,
communication?
a big struggle is clear, concise communication. I get this. It feels like it's nebulous, and sometimes I'm sitting at my computer going, "How do I respond to this? How do I respond to this?" And I even asked Trey. I'm like, Trey, did I respond to this effectively? And so yeah, it can be difficult because for me it's not concise enough. I want snapshot and I want it all like bullet list structure. Give me the snapshot. I don't want to go like half English, half whatever FE language that he's speaking. But it really is frustrating for me, and I have to resist my natural frustration with it. I mean, I will say like, hey, get to the chase, but at the same time, I that's not even that's a lot nicer than what I'm normally thinking.
I, I want to chime in that I think ENTP, ENTJ works well on the FE level because of the same reason that ENTP and INTJ work well, which is, but less so. It's much more balanced in ENTJ, ENTP. But for it's this issue where ENTP at in the third slot, we don't feel particularly confident when we're called upon to rely heavily on FE. We don't feel particularly enthused about that, right? That's not an activity or an opportunity that we are going to say, great, I'm well suited to kill it in this opportunity if it requires a shitload of FE and not a whole lot of anything else. So when we encounter others who don't necessarily prioritize FE also, then we're not worried about making a mistake and offending them so much, because we feel as though that's where we tend to cause our problems in life. I tend to cause my problems with FE mistakes, not with TI mistakes or NE mistakes.
Right. Yeah, I definitely cause my problems with FE mistakes.
So it makes sense then that ENTJ and ENTP would feel comfortable, both of them sort of going, can we drop the FE shit? Yes? Okay, great.
Right.
That works for ENTP. I think it works for ENTJ as well.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's kind of like a mutual understanding of logic. Like, cut it to me straight. ENTPs will. And I appreciate that. At the same
keep
time,
us on topic.
That's why I appreciate it about anybody who has this high preference for logic. It's much easier for me to. I mean, I'm fine with saying, "Hey, I'm wrong." Cool. All right, let's move on. I don't need to go, "Oh, my feelings are hurt, and you really hurt my feelings by telling me I'm wrong."
Right.
I don't really need to do that. I don't really care. Like, even if I did have a feeling that got hurt, I wouldn't give a crap. Okay, great, my feeling got hurt. Who cares?
What?
So
I think ENTPs can get hurt by the lack of ENTJ's FE, and especially when they're not taken seriously enough by the ENTJ and can't recognize their utility. When an ENTP, and if an ENTP and ENTJ are working together, and say the ENTJ is the boss, and ENTP and they're around each other all the time, they're going to see the chaos that is an ENTP at times and see that as weakness. And also, an ENTJ there's more than just communicating. There's more than FE than just when you're just communicating with somebody directly. So it's like, okay.
What?
I thought that you just.
No, I'm just
thought that was a
scratching my
stretch.
lip. Nothing to do with you at all. I'm just scratching my lip because
Well,
I need to trim my mustache, both directions, bottom and top. Go ahead.
no, I just thought. So I had an ENTJ boss, CEO, and we had a really interesting relationship, much like you two were just explaining. For the most part, it worked really well. Um, but the ENTJ boss, and he made a ton of money off me. I left, and he brought me back, and it was interesting. But he would not understand. He could display FE really well, and he could, in the moment, he could manage that with talking to people, but he didn't understand and actually didn't care about the concerns of the morale of the rest of the company, which I was trying to explain to him. Hey, your culture fucking sucks. He say, what is culture? So like, man, these people are, they haven't had any
That's
investing
not
in
your
their.
job, Nick. Complaining about shit is not your job. Look, I've not had an ENTA boss. It might be a problem, but
I think it would be a problem.
maybe.
Because you would try and do shit that you were good at. You would say, "Hey, look at this. You're missing this," and it'd be fun to say that, "Hey, you're missing this. Look at it." Was just look at it.
I mean,
And the ENTJ, with the lack of the ENTJ's FE, eventually he would disrespect the fuck out of you.
look, I don't care about what you're calling disrespect.
Just look at it.
I don't care what you're
Just
calling
look at it.
disrespect. Okay, because the thing is, in my understanding of work problems is based on my previous employer, who was not an ENTJ. I am pretty sure she was quite good at executing protocols and stuff. I think of her as probably ENFJ or
The thing,
INFJ,
well,
probably.
just look at it like this: ENTJs like structure, ENTPs don't. And if an ENTJ is the boss, it's
That's
going to be a
not
highly
the
structured
problem.
system, and the
That's
ENTP is going to have a problem is fitting into that structure that the
okay.
ENTJ made.
Fine. I'm not saying it's impossible that I would have a problem with an ENTJ boss. I'm just saying that that's not the kind of work that I would be doing. That would be the kind of work I would be doing for a boss would not be structured in that fashion because it would be. I mean, the structure would be like you have
An
two
ENTJ would make it
projects to
structured.
do. Well,
I think the idea
Speaking
here.
of structure, we're losing focus of the conversation, which is FE.
it wouldn't be FE problems. It's not FE problems that I get into trouble with bosses. Okay, and the problem I had with my last boss was T problems. Right? She didn't want to answer my questions.
Oh God, Eric, here you go. Someone not answering your questions, right?
Yeah, that's the gist of it.
So
She was saying
here's
things that were contradictory or logical, and I'm telling her, but this and this and this, but if this and this, then this, right? And she didn't want to answer that question. I'm like, well, then you are not a human being because you are not playing fair.
well, one thing I wanted to bring up is with the you're talking about ENTJ boss situation. When I first brought it up, talking about ENTPs, ENTJs, and then ENFJs, ENFPs, the idea I had in mind was like creative partners. Is the idea that I had in mind. With the boss situation, I'm not sure exactly how the dynamic would shift. But for one thing, if you have two people who are struggling in the area of FE, where somebody's missing something, I don't think it's necessarily practical to be like, all right, now let's just really just dig into our feelings right now. If that's not what they excel at, if they don't feel too much of a need to really go there, I feel like setting up the environment in a practical way so that whatever situations you're getting into that are causing those feeling related issues, try to restructure the environment so that you're not getting into those issues anymore. Like you're restructuring the way that things are. I feel like that would be.
that one can successfully bypass the FI judging function and still attain the same outcome in terms of individual morality through a careful application of TI, SI, and a little bit of wiggle room with NE. Okay.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, I think you can still craft a situation in which those cultural values would be utilized and effective, regardless of using how you're judging that information by using FE. So you can still create a replication of that.
FE. I forgot to include that one in the mix. That was an important one to include in the recipe there. FE definitely would have to be included with the TI. But I mean, I think I try to adhere to certain when matters of ethics or goodness, altruism come into play, which are different things. Which are two different sets of things. I try to be consistent in application of a set of sort of axiomatic principles and rules. I have kind of a rules-based normative interaction with the world that I have come to understand most people don't take that approach.
So, go ahead.
Oh no, sure. You go ahead.
I was just going to ask. Okay, so you've got this. Essentially, you've got this rule book that you have in your mind, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that's what it is? Okay. What kind of rules would you have established, for example, for the world that you have? I'm just curious.
Well, I would say, for example, in terms of technical ethics, like whether or not I should feel guilty about a course of action, regardless of whether I feel any empathy for another that might cause me to experience guilt through that mechanism, right? So there's a sense of whether I've committed a wrongdoing. It's based on trespass against others and the extent to which it does so. And it to a certain extent defies absolute precision on the grounds that there are a couple of things that I have to weigh, like, well, it may not be a physical trespass, but how much of a metaphysical trespass is it, and what justifies it, and is it of the sort that's inherently okay because of certain exceptions? Like, I got a lot of shit in place, you know? It's complicated, but I could walk you through any decision through all those sets of rules and explain where at that point that thing got eliminated as a possibility, or why it made it through.
That'd be interesting to go through the labyrinth of your normative claims of the world. I'd like to go through that sometime.
Yeah, that'd be fun for me, obviously. It's one of those things that I normally address, or I have to think about here in this context on YouTube, right, as a video maker and as a commenter and as a interactor with the community and stuff. I am shockingly constrained, to be perfectly honest. You know, there's not much tomfoolery that I can justify.
Right. Yeah, and I have my own dilemmas that are associated with my perspective as well. But I guess there's always that part of the type that you're like, damn it, and I call it the damn it function. FI is my damn it function. And it's because sometimes, and a lot of times, actually most of the time, I actually don't have a logical reason of why I view something the way that I do, so I attempt to resolve it, but it's so damn stubborn.
Do you find that it's usually right?
Do I find if it's usually right? Yes, but it's only right within me. I don't enforce it on other people. So that's where I've constrained a lot, and I think it really builds up this whole belief of why I hold information personal, is because I don't want to enforce my worldview that it's rooted in my own intrapersonal morality on other people, because it works only within me. It doesn't work in the real world. And
so do you have a clear preference between different people that you encounter in the world? Do you say, like, I like that person better and that person a little bit worse and that person a little bit more than that?
No, I don't really do that. I just see people as people, and I either can dislike it or that person, or I can either don't like that person. There's really no like, I don't weigh people up like, I really like this person, semi like this person. There's black and white, kind of like you're either on my good side or you're on my bad side kind of thing.
So
Like a very limited level.
what sort of things do you value with your feelings that you would say, I personally, as describing in terms of personal preferences, given that there's no objective reasons to prefer one or the other. Where's that sound coming from?
That's Unify. He turned his mic on. I'll mute him. There.
Okay, can you repeat the question because that was distracting.
The question is
Personal preferences.
yeah, okay. So can you explain introverted feeling as a matter of having personal preferences of one thing over another thing, even though there's no particular objective reason to value one over the other?
Yeah, I don't know if I can provide a realistic example, but if it comes up, I can tell you, like, yeah. And because I don't make decisions off of that necessarily, it's hard for me to touch base with it. You're asking me to dive deep and really analyze, okay, is this something that I don't really have a reason for valuing one thing over the other? I'm sure there is some type of belief system there. It's just unconscious as hell, you know, and trying to justify it takes a lot of work. So I tend to avoid trying to work with it unless I see it as something that's totally impractical at times. Like, why the hell do you believe something stupid like that? And then I have to go back and figure it out. Okay, well, and then I say, okay, I would never push that on someone else, but it doesn't change the way that I particularly feel about this thing, whatever it may be.
Do you think feelings persist over time, so that you feel the same way about something today as you do a week from now?
For me, yeah, they do.
Anybody else?
Unless I'm presented with a logical argument, which allows me to restructure it. But that's very hard with FI. So it really does, like I said, it's resistant to even logic. That's why I do not like arguing on terms of feelings. Because if you can present a logical argument, and I have a belief system that's FI, like I said, it's the damn it function. Like, and you tackle that belief system effectively and you resolve it, I am consciously thinking that makes a lot of freaking sense. But my FI is like, fuck you, no, fuck you. And I'm just like, I'm not going to react that way, but I can feel it. And I hate that part about it. I deal with that a lot. Like, okay, just let it go. The person's right. For TE. It's effective and objective and I can utilize it. What's the use of feeling this way if it's not resulting in something? You know, and that's where, anyway, I'll turn the floor over to someone else real quick.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts on this? I've got additional questions, but I want to make sure other people get a chance to speak.
What you were describing with FI and how you call it the damn it function, do you think that's sort of like an FI grip in a way, where it's like you've been cycling through TE and SC and you're just kind of out there doing, in a lot of ways, you're orienting yourself around these different logical concepts or things like that, and on occasion you find yourself sort of getting stopped or sort of trying to escape in a way and trying to root?
I would say no, naturally, but I have been in loops quite a bit. I can tell you that. But as of like my state now, no. But if something were to cross that moral boundary that I've set up with FI, I would definitely feel that internally. But I don't really show it. And I don't demonstrate it. I don't act on it. I can just feel it, and then I have to reason with it. Like I have to explain to it. And my curiosity comes from, I wonder how other people experience their inferior function. Yeah. You know, and that to me is very interesting because it's like I constantly have to negotiate with FI. That's what it feels like. I have to negotiate. Like, okay, I'm gonna give you your crying time later. Shut up, sit down, and you can cry later. And then my FI can go whine to me later, and we can have a negotiation later. But you know, at the time when I'm taking the argument, I'll be like, yeah, that makes sense. And I'm like, and then I have to go reason with myself. Okay.
Yeah. I definitely see. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm done.
I was going to say I see inferior SE in myself as like sort of an animal that I have to try to tame in some ways. because it just wants to do the shit it wants to do. When it comes to loops, when it comes to it in a negative fashion,
Yeah.
it's sort of a desperate attempt to get outside of my head, so I just try to overload it with sensory experience of what's going on in sort of the current context.
I'm gonna.
No, I kind
feel
of
these
relate to that as
bumps.
well.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interject if you were going somewhere with that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I also, like, you know, it's almost like I want to do something because I'm like, man, I want to do this. So I do it, and then everyone's like, man, you shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. And I'm like, I was trying to have fun. You know what I mean? And I don't just mean it like, I mean, I haven't really experienced this in a while, I don't think, but like, really just like, when I'm really wanting to engage and do something fun and do something cool, there's like, people will confront me and tell me that what I've done was wrong. You know what I mean? And it's almost like, oh man, I messed up, because it's like, and it happened a lot in school, really, because
Trey, listen, I gotta cut you off. I'm gonna give you the solution to this really quickly. Okay?
It's not actually giving you a solution.
I am
You can
giving
keep
you
talking.
the fucking solution. Listen, you gotta deal with the fact that people are gonna give you pushback, and you have to recognize the fact that there's probably pushback regarding some element of failure within the thing you did. But you got to embrace that failure as the thing to learn from and to avoid doing those particular mistakes next time, and try to adjust from each process. You're going to encounter feedback. To the extent that you get direct feedback that's telling you shit doesn't work because it's offensive in some regard, it's probably not worth whatever benefits it has artistically. If you're getting shit for stuff failing, like it's just not working exactly, then that just means you got to work it out a bit. You got to be willing to put in some failures before shit's going to start working, and not all your shit will work regardless. The thing you ought not do is waste energy fretting about shit you already made that already has provided you the learning opportunities, but instead move forward to make the next thing having learned from those learning opportunities, and not spend time fretting about the past failure. That's my thoughts on that.
Uh-huh.
A cab driver just told me that.
Did he?
Huh?
Smart cab driver.
Yeah, I had a conversation with the cab driver. He told me the exact same thing.
Can you stop molesting a wind tunnel? Thank you. Yeah, okay, so the thing I was going to say with Trey, to tie that into feelings as we were initially talking about, like that inferior SE, I feel like the sort of issue that's there, the reason why we get stuck in those loops of being stuck in our head is we try to extrovert it away, and then we get sort of scolded. Like, no, you need to stop that. And so we revert and we go back to, okay, thinking in here, trying to figure things out, but it's like what we need to be doing is getting out. But it's the issue of trying to reconcile FE, and I think FI to an extent, of trying to figure out how to do things that are socially acceptable but not necessarily take on everything we encounter from other people as how we need to see things or how we need to act, which is where I think FI sort of plays part of a role, where it's like trying to find out what your actual values are. Because I definitely think for INFJs it's something that's strong. We can have pretty strong values about things, but it's sort of like, I don't know, I tie shame to it quite a bit, but maybe that's due to Enneagram 4 or something like that. It's like, or maybe it would just be the heart. Whatever. Basically, sorry, I'm trying to wrap this
Yeah,
up.
why shame?
What's that?
Why shame?
I still don't know what he said.
He said, "Why shame?"
Why shame? Okay, sorry. Why shame? Well, because probably with the extroverted sensing, when I'm talking about that sort of expression, part of it's tied to my own feelings in a certain way. There was something that I was wanting to do. Maybe I got into a grip, and so I did something that maybe it was a bit inappropriate. But I had an initial desire to express myself based on my values, and at some point it may have gotten shot down, or it may have been a habit of being shot down, which is probably a process plenty of people go through as children, where they're trying to express themselves, and it's like, okay, you can only express yourself so much, because jumping off the back of the couch and face planting concrete, face planting tile, it's not a fun expression of yourself right there. That's not a value you should hold. Sorry, I'm derailing.
I'll take over in a second, Ken. I'm sending a message on Tinder to somebody.
One thing I wanted to touch on. One thing I wanted to touch on is right in that moment right there when you said I'm going to take over. In that moment, I felt frustration.
Really?
Because
you
it's
didn't
like
feel relief?
No,
You
I felt
told me
frustration
you were
because it's like,
floundering.
why can't I? It's like an issue I have where it's like, why can't I fucking just make a point? Why do I gotta
That is
meander?
INFJ Hitler complex you just got.
Hitler complex?
Does that mean
Thanks.
you're frustrated with yourself or frustrated with me? I read it as you frustrated with me, but I think
I'm,
it meant
I'm
you're
frustrated
yourself.
with myself because, and part of it's frustration, part of it's fear. It's like I'm frustrated with myself that I'm not able to keep up, and the reason why that would even bother me not being able to keep up is because I feel like I'll be left behind in some way.
It's the duck.
That I
Ken.
won't be of use
It's
in some way. I
PTSD
won't have
for
my
the duck.
utility.
When you decided to take that duck home, you didn't understand how traumatic that was going to be. And now you're a little bit damaged. But we're here to make you feel healed and better and to win your prize, whatever that might be.
I don't appreciate that, Eric. I'm trying to delve into this.
What are you
I know
talking
you're
about
having fun.
exactly? What are we talking about?
I'm trying to
trying to-
talk about my. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm trying to talk about my feelings.
We're talking about the inferior the relationship, but we've strayed far off the topic of feelings in general, which I know that we wanted to dive into that as well. So I know that it was relevant.
I tried to tie it back into FE and FI.
Yeah. I saw it. No, it was relevant. Yeah. You know, but I also see where he's coming from when he talks about how he's frustrated mainly because I guess he felt like you cut in because he couldn't get it out the way he wanted to get it out. And that's probably
I
why
was
he was
saving his ass. I thought he was reaching out for a life.
Well, yeah, that's what you were trying to do, but he wanted to be able to, I think, work it out, and that's probably why he felt frustrated with himself, though. I don't think he was frustrated with you necessarily.
I wanted competency in it. I want to be able to finish it, and being cut off implies that I'm not up to snuff. Not necessarily that that's what you were implying, but it's what I...
I mean, you know, I wasn't even busting your chops. I wasn't gonna even do anything except you said like.
It's not about you though. That's
Eric,
no,
don't
that's-
worry about it. Go back to
Yeah.
Tinder.
Yeah, Eric. Here's the thing. Here's the thing you need to understand is it's not your problem. That's the whole point. It's like it's my problem that I'm trying to figure out, and then you being like, well, that's not even what I was trying to do. I'm like, it's not my problem. Stop trying to make it your problem. This is my problem.
Ken, listen. Here's what you need to understand.
Ken is
Our problem, Eric, is getting
Ken.
control.
Hold on, Ken. What you need to understand is that you are my favorite viewer. You really are. I talk to a lot of people, but you are my number one participant.
Oh, man.
Host Ken. I am appalled by that.
This is proper use of FE. Just so you know, FE's not always nice. This is a proper use of FE on
Oh,
occasion.
stop. It's burning me.
All right, let's get back on topic.
Sorry. See, that's what they need. So are we done? Let's end this video. Let's start another one about a different topic. Unless we have something specific to wrap it up. Let's have a nice wrap up, okay?
Well, I know, Eric. You said you had additional questions.
Oh, right, about FE or FI. What were
Or
they asking?
either or. It was
Okay.
something. It was probably FI related because I was talking about how was the damn it function. And you said you had additional
Okay.
questions.
So, well, first of all, you said it was the what function? Oh, the
The
damn.
damn
Right.
it function. Yeah, that's what I called it. It's in the name. I don't know if
Okay.
you guys experience inferior that way, but I did, so that's why I called it that.
Well, I
DE's my damn it function.
would suggest that SI, when I feel panic in life enough to motivate me to act, I act in SI ways. It's like, oh shit, Eric, you gotta fucking pay those bills. They've been sitting there on that table for too long now, and you need to pay them today because they're gonna be late. You know, like that kind of thing. That's me. Now, if you want to know what SI in the fourth slot is like, all I have to do is show you with my camera. It looks like this. It's full of soda cans and coffee. This is my desk, okay? So if you look at it, it is just covered with trash. Right?
SI.
There's nothing but
SI in the
trash.
super
But
ego.
then look at that.
Can is-
Da-da-da. Professional. I'm very professional. you see? Thanks to my extreme professionalism, today I, here on Talking About Famous People, will exhibit a very professional delivery. Damon?
All right. So, but I still. What was the question?
Oh, right. Oh, I don't know. What the fuck was I going to ask you? Something about something. I
Life
guess
is the
this.
question, Damon. Life is the question, and you're missing the whole play.
I think
See, the
when
thing
I
is,
see-
I would say, Eric, the solution is to write it down, but he wouldn't do that. He's like,
No, actually, I know what I have the equivalent to make, which is I think FE functions exactly like that for me. That if I'm playing too rough and I see somebody's facial expression convey to me a reflexive hurt, like that they're not able to successfully cover it up, or I can see that I've caused pain in some fashion, I tend to recoil back in terror, right, from my having caused that damage. So I guess in that capacity, I like my harms to be done from a certain distance if I feel justified in doing them, because I don't want to experience the introverted feeling of feeling bad about the extroverted feeling that I'm experiencing.
that makes sense. I guess I can relate to that. My FI, I think our problem with the FEFI, they have the same conclusion. Because for me, it's like I have this value of mine, which is don't treat other people in a way that you wish not to be treated. So I try to give everyone respect, and if I feel I disrespected somebody, I am more upset with myself for doing that. I try to give as many people respect as possible, and it's a personal value of mine. And I think it's a value that could be universal. I mean, obviously, I think most people deserve respect. I don't know anybody that doesn't deserve any type of respect, but it's a value of mine. So that being said, it's kind of the same thing. I guess I fire back on myself and go, "Wow, I've caused harm. I've disrespected somebody in a way they didn't deserve." And so I guess I can relate. Would you say that's similar?
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't tend to phrase it in terms of that's fantastic, Trey. That's spectacular.
Late night Yolorian Truths. You need to create a new channel. It's not Talking with Famous People Raw. It's Late Night Yolorian Truths.
I sent it to you on Facebook. That's why I told you to check your Facebook, but you didn't even look at the message. You just accepted my friend request.
Well, I got there. I did one thing. I figured that must be what I was here for, and I left. I don't know. The answer to your question about the difference there is there's too much shit happening between your question and right now. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be answering.
I just drew a comparison between you and me as far as I am that disrespect respect. You said you wouldn't coin it as
respect, right? Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily refer to it as that. I would say I try to. I guess I assume the best out of everybody. I assume the best, but I am quite fighty. So there's lots of things that will, in my mind, be like, you better, one more thing and it's game on. I'm going to start saying something, because there's certain things I don't like to see in the world, and I'm going to say shit if I see it. And sometimes I'll wait a second. How much of a bitch is this woman going to be before I'm going to start, opening my mouth.
Right. I mean, I have a limit too. I try, and for me, it's like after a certain point, I just can't. I can't take it. But as far as for me, it's like I have this. I noticed that you have this. You look at the impact of what you do, and you go, "Oh shit." See, I look at how it affect me if I were in that position. It's not so much the direct impact. It's a reflection on how it impacts me, and if I were in that position. I'm looking at something very subjective when it comes to FI. And that's what so it's similar in that regard, I guess, but I use the words respect, disrespect. I don't mind, like I said, correcting people and stuff, but I try to do it in a respectful way, but I'm still pretty blunt about it. I just think I try to, and the key word is try. I fail quite a bit,
Well,
and I'm aware of that.
I would say I'm not even sure it's motivated by emotion as much as I was given credit for there. I think to a large degree, when I'm evaluating this kind of actions, I think to myself, where does it land on a spectrum of attackiness? Where does it land on a spectrum of playfulness? Where does it land on a spectrum of, in terms of side alignment? What is objectively said? By whom? All those kind of things factor into a complex equation in terms of, and it's pretty gut oriented. It's not like something I work out details of, but it's just kind of like, well, considering all these different factors, either the preponderance will land on one side or the other. You kind of get a general sense of which is more heavily weighted, and you say, okay, that seems safe. At least, and I tend to want to push the barriers a little bit, but I don't have any just targets.
Mm-hmm. For me, I would say it's not emotional either. The aftermath, what I deal with afterward, that's the emotional response. It happens later. It comes up, like I said, it's like way after the argument or whatever, the discussion, the agreement, disagreement, that's what it would be. But it takes time. And then once it hits me, it's like I deal with it. And one thing I've noticed is, I would say, as far as I understand, I would say that ENTPs, the ones that I've known as well, are more detached from their emotions than pretty much any other type. I've seen that the way they argue is they're totally detached, which I actually appreciate. I feel that us NTJs, we're softies on the inside, and like I said, we'll cry about it later. And I tell the FI, go cry about it later. Deal with this, but I'll deal with it later. I don't know if ENTPs ever have that type of backlash, or even INTPs, similar. That kind of like
catches up to us eventually, but it has to be pretty big to necessarily catch up, because when you've got a 2 to 3 month waiting period for some big things, like when I got divorced, right? Got divorced, separated, she's gone in September. Thanksgiving, I experienced the emotions of getting divorced. It was months later. And even then, it was a bad few days here, a bad week here maybe. And then mostly there wasn't anything left to know about that. It's like I had experienced all the emotions that I needed to feel as though I had undergone that necessary chore. And I understand that to give the events of one's life deep and lasting meaning, such that the memories of them become embedded in you in a way that's non-verbal, that's whole to your individuality, and that makes you a unique entity, requires that one feel one's way through those dramatic and traumatic experiences that one has. And for me, I found it very helpful to make media about those experiences as well, to concretize the experiences into a time object that I can refer to again if I wanted to, and almost certainly will if it comes out good. If it comes out not so good, I probably won't refer to it again.
What do you do in a situation?
Go. What?
Sorry. What do you do in a situation when other people are disrespecting you for absolutely no reason, and it's something like internal within themselves that is kind of like projected outward onto you? Maybe they had a bad day, or maybe they have a particular stereotypical concept of you which they're like reacting to emotionally or something like that. You know what I mean? Well, and some people just be.
I would say.
Is that for Eric, or is that for you, Eric?
Let me feel that. I'd say if there's an example of projection, then one has to make a determination about whether one should call attention to it or not. But I think that in general, the intensity with which one feels an injustice associated with it is contraindicative to being the person who ought to be diagnosing. So, I mean, it's a tricky business to play with socially from an FE perspective. On that note, let me end this video because it's quite long at this point. We've talked a wandering a wild path, a wild briars a growing beside the path the whole time. Thanks for watching Talking with Finch. That's 50 minutes and 42 seconds.